All right, for math today, we're going to work on word problems and not only solving them, but also really understanding what each number in the word problem represents, okay? So, I'm going to have the sub pause the video until everybody has their math packet. Please make sure your name is on it. So, sub, if you would, pause the video until everyone can get their math sheet and get their name on it. All right. So here we go. I'm actually going to walk you guys through number 7. So you need to flip this over to the back. It'll say teacher/video example problem. So make sure that you have your page turned to the back to number 7, labeled teacher/video example problem, so you can follow along with me. So your directions on the front talk about circle what each number represents first, then solve it. So we're going to go through that together for number 7. Number 7 says, in football, a player scores 6 points for a touchdown and 3 points for a field goal. Suhi's team scored 2 touchdowns in this week's game. Last week, they scored 1 touchdown and 1 field goal. How many points did Suhi's team score in both games combined? So before I jump into this, I want to look at each of these numbers and figure out what they represent. So the number 6, is that the number of points for a touchdown, the number of points for a field goal, how many touchdowns they made last week, how many touchdowns they made this week, or is that the number of field goals? All I have to do is go back in my problem. It says a player scores 6 points for a touchdown. So by the number 6, I'm going to find which answer choice matches that information. The 6 represents the number of points for a touchdown, so I would circle A. A says number of points for a touchdown. Now let's look at the 3. What does the 3 represent? If I go back into my word problem, I can see that it says 3 points for a field goal. All right, which one of these answer choices, A, B, C, D, or E, says number of points for a field goal? That's B. I know that my 3 is my number of points for a field goal. Okay, what does this 2 represent? It says his team scored 2 touchdowns in this week's game. So the 2 is the number of touchdowns in this week's game. I would circle D. What does that 1 represent? It said last week they scored 1 touchdown. So that would be C, number of touchdowns in last week's game. And last week they also scored 1 field goal. So that last number 1 is going to be E, number of field goals. All right, now that I know what every single one of these numbers represents, I can try to solve it. So I know, and I'm just going to make myself some notes, even though I have this here, that 6 is the points for the touchdown. Okay, well, how many touchdowns has his team scored? I know they scored 2 touchdowns in this week's game. So I have 1, 2 touchdowns. They're each worth 6 points, 6 points. Well, what about last week? Well, last week they only scored 1 touchdown. So this can serve us last week's. Now, I'm going to go ahead and figure out how many points they got for touchdowns this week and last week. So you can see I have a total of 3 touchdowns over this week's game and last week's game. Each of those touchdowns is worth 6 points. I could add the 6 up 3 times. I should know that repeated addition is the same as multiplication. I need the sub to pause and get someone to answer this question. What would my multiplication sentence be for this repeated addition sentence? What is the multiplication sentence that goes with this repeated addition sentence? Sub, please pause the video and call on someone. All right, so you see that we're adding up the number 6, 1, 2, 3 times. So the multiplication sentence to match this repeated addition sentence would be 6 times 3. I know that's 18. Okay, I've got my touchdowns covered. Whoopsies. Now I got to worry about field goals. Let's see. It says that a field goal, I know field goal is worth 3 points. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 is what that FG, field goal, is. All right, well, how many field goals? It said his team scored 2 touchdowns in this week's game. It didn't mention any field goals. Okay, and then last week they scored 1 touchdown and 1 field goal. Okay, so between this week and last week, they only had 1 field goal. So that 3 just stays by himself. He's a 3. Now, my question is asking me how many points did his team score in both of the games combined. So, I have to include all of my scores from both of my games. I'm going to have the sub pause the video again and ask, what should I do with the 18 points they got from touchdowns this week and last week, and the 3 points they got for field goals? What should we do with the 18 and the 3? The sub's going to pause the video and call on someone to answer that. All right, since we're combining the points in the games, we're going to add them. So, 18 plus 3. If I don't have this memorized, I can just count up 18, 19, 20, 21. But 21 what? 21 touchdowns, field goals, footballs, teams. Remember, the question says, how many points did his team score in both games combined? So if I want to use the redraw right method, I read my problem, I drew it out, I solved it. Now I can write that they scored 21 points in both games. All right, so what you guys are going to do is you're going to work on number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 because we've done 7 together. So I want you to try these by yourself. If you need the sub to read out a question for you, that's fine. Or if the whole class would like for the sub to read each of the questions for them, that's also fine, just like I do for you guys when we have a test. So sub, if you see that a lot of people are asking you to read it, you can just simply read one problem at a time. And then when you're done reading all of them, then you can go back and read specific problems or part of problems for students. So remember, to do this work correctly, you need to solve each problem first and to solve each problem, the first thing you need to do is circle what each number represents, and then you solve it. You see, I caught my mistake. I was trying to jump in. If I jump in, I might make a silly mistake. So first, what I want you to do is figure out what each of these numbers in the problem represents by looking at the problem and finding the matching answer choice. Then when you know what every single number represents, then you can go ahead and solve it. So try your very best. Make sure your name is on this. When you're done, I want you to hand it to the sub. And if you're the first one finished and you're totally sure you did your best work, you know that you can grab a bag of flashcards. Once you see more people finished, you can partner up with them. But be respectful of people who are still working, okay? Keep it at a level 1. If it gets too crazy, I'm going to have the sub regroup you, okay? And you'll have to do it whole group instead of doing flashcards with your friends. So, show me your very best work. Show the sub how super awesome, smart, and respectful we are.